Okay, good evening, everybody. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Today is Thursday, April 28th. It's 7:07 p.m. We're here for the purpose of the Communications Committee. So we are going to call to order and we are going to get started. I appreciate everyone being here this evening. First thing we're going to do is go with public comment. Public comment, we like to handle the same way we handle public comment during our council meetings, and that is we ask you to sign in, which I have the sign-up sheet here. When you're recognized, I ask that you go over to the microphone over there. We are videotaping this for people who cannot be here. We ask that you keep your comments to 3 minutes out of respect for people who want to speak this evening, but also out of respect for the work we want to get done here tonight. When you get to the microphone, we ask that you state your name for the record. Address is optional. That having been said, I have our sign-up sheet here, and the first person on the list is Michael Crumry. Mr. Crumry?
Michael Crumry, 570 West Crockett, 2nd Ward. I want to thank Mayor Morley and City Manager Grabowski, along with all the other aldermen that have been both professional and diligent over the past 9+ months during these public stormwater communication meetings. Mayor Morley and City Manager Grabowski, you have continued to remain focused on the goal of providing flood mitigation relief for the greater good of all residents. Your efforts are appreciated. The remainder of my talking points will sound familiar because it contains the same questions asked back on December 9th. This might not be the legal terminology, but when the York High School construction expansion completed in 2002, it was to include a $1 million payment in lieu of on-site rainwater detention flood mitigation. Yet District 205 and York High School continue to flood their neighbors to the west, and the $1 million fine has not been paid. During the second public stormwater communication meeting held back on July 23rd, District 205 Board of Education President Jim Collins stated, quote, "Let's get this 15-year-old issue behind us as quickly as possible." Why does this issue remain unresolved? July 27th was 7 months ago. 7 months. That's 280 days ago. Unfortunately, on December 18th, unfortunately on December 18th, via a letter, Elmhurst residents learned that the College View York High School project, use of a practice soccer field open area, is on hold. Yet back on August 13th, the school board stated, quote, "We genuinely want to be part of the solution." October 29th, the school board stated, quote, "While we are not particularly convinced that the twice monthly public meetings contributed to expediting the process, that was a reply to the Madison site back in October, which was 6 months ago. A slow pace of this same timeline in the private sector would simply be unacceptable. So why is it acceptable here? All are free to watch the videos of the prior meetings in which these comments were made. Fine, get upset. Yell at residents for asking tough questions. Deflecting or ignoring these questions does not make the flooding issue go away. Meetings have been held for over 5 years now, and Elmhurst residents have yet to see a shovel in the ground with D205 or the Park District. Remember the phrase, your actions speak louder than words.
Kathleen Sullivan. Tonight I would look forward to hearing comments on, of course, Golden Meadows. One of the issues there seems to be that we're looking at possibly adjusting the timeline, and I just want to state my personal interest in getting to the Illinois Department of Natural Resources as soon as possible, given that that's a whole new set of government entities that we're going to have to face. This month, last week, we passed the 6-year anniversary of the April 18th, 2013 flood. That was 3 years ago, and it was 6 years ago when we started all of this in 2010. So, and my neighborhood's been coming since 2009. So it's been 7 years already. So I'm very interested in if we have new hurdles to cross with other governmental agencies to get those those balls rolling as soon as possible. I'm certainly also interested in updates on your comments. I was at the public open house last week. Very, very nice job done by everybody. Thanks. And as well as looking forward to hearing updates on Madison and Brian and getting those shovels in the ground soon. Thanks.
Okay, that's it for folks who signed up this evening. Is there anybody who is in the audience who did not have an opportunity to sign up on the sign-in sheet but wishes to address the council? If so, please raise your, wishes to address the committee. If so, please raise your hand. Anyone wish to address the committee before I close public forum? Seeing none, we'll officially draw close to public forum. Any general updates before we dig in? Park District, any? Oh, well, I know Jim has one. Park District, do you have any general updates before we get started?
Sure. Just wanted to mention that we're looking forward to tonight's meeting. We've made a lot of progress since the last meeting. We've had a number of conversations with between myself and the city manager, and really made a lot of progress. We have we just feel a few outstanding points to be resolved, and obviously the York Commons IGA has already been approved, but we're nearly that's nearly ready to go. And then a few ideas on the IGA for Golden Meadows, and we're looking forward to proceeding ahead. On behalf of the Park Board, I should say.
Okay. Mr. McDonough, any quick update or general comments before we get started?
Yeah, generally, just want to say a few things. Maybe a little explanation about our absence last week would be appropriate. It was not that we didn't choose to attend. It happened the night of the end of school. Spring break started that day. I thought I was going to be here. The other board members all headed out. I had a late change to my work schedule and was able to get out of town to take my daughter to a couple college visits. I sent an email to the mayor and asked Dave Moyer, the superintendent, to write a written update. I think the mayor gave his own update. I don't think he read the update, but we hope that's there's some understanding that sometimes we take family time, and that was spring break. Unfortunate that it happened suddenly. It happened, we gave notice before the meeting, and you know, if this ever happens again, and I don't think it will, we always try to get a substitute for this, we will again try to write a written update so people get to know what's going on. So I hope that's. The other item that I wanted to discuss is something I think Dave Moyer gave a heads up to you, Jim's, about this. Our board on Tuesday discussed these conversations. And as has been said before, we've been meeting for 9 or 10 months now, about 13 meetings, talking about stormwater. There are, as you noted, 6 projects underway and 2 projects that are somewhere in the city's final design process, one of them being Bryan. And with Bryan, we will complete 28 acre-feet on school properties. The city has expressed repeatedly the urgency of this, and we've tried to respond in a timely fashion within the limitations of having to have school board matters going on at the same time. What we have done is we've responded despite not having a facilities plan. And that's pretty central when we're talking about the future of our kids' schools. And so to get 28 acre-feet on school district property when the school district is still working on a facilities plan, I think is a fairly responsive result. One of the things that we noted on Tuesday was that the city's been very busy on other things. Han Street's going up. It's a very big project. It's got a sign inviting people to come seek rentals. The city council approved another 6-story building. There was discussions of transit-oriented development, and I guess Alderman Mulliner said we want to see how it goes. I know the Park District's been busy with its own projects, and the school board has been busy too. We welcomed a new superintendent in this time. We settled the teacher's contract. We hired a new principal for York. We've dealt with space issues at Field School, and we have engaged in what's called Focus 205, the process by which we're seeking community input. And so we can go through all the necessary steps to create a solid capital plan for the future of our schools and our school kids. The reason I give that background is on Thursday night at the reorganization meeting of the school board, Emily Bastido and I were again reappointed to represent the interests of the schools at the city's Parks and Schools Committee. And we stopped and we said, but wait a minute, we haven't had anything but stormwater discussions for a year and a half, maybe closing in on 2 years now. And that's fine. That is an urgent need for the citizens, for the taxpayers, and we should be responsive. But the general view among the school board at that time was that we need to restore our broader communications with our community partners, the city and the park district. We need to understand and respect each other's missions and how we're each going about pursuing our respective missions for the benefit of our respective constituents, in our case, the students. The taxpayers need us to do this, to look for efficiencies and work together to save money. For the schools, as we move forward on the Focus 205, as I just described, and move toward strategic and capital plans, we need to know whether things are changing in town. We need to know if our demographics study that was done about 2 years ago, which relies almost exclusively on a single-family model, needs to be reconsidered given these recent considerations of transit-oriented design. Many of the decisions that the city undertakes or the park district undertakes will affect what we do, and the same thing, what we do may affect what you do. I think it's best for all of us, or the board believes that what's best for all of us is if we restore the structure and the schedule of our general discussions that existed for many years until they were somewhat curtailed by discussions about stormwater. And so, not asking for a response right now. If people want to react, that's fine too. But our board seemed to believe that there was a lot of value getting the old general conversations between the three bodies together, at the same time being responsive to urgent needs like stormwater when they arise, but that there is a lot of benefit in broadening the conversation. So I'm just wondering if there's any thoughts about that.
I would wholeheartedly agree to that. I think forming that committee 3 or 4 years ago, I can't remember how long ago, I know we were a big driving force to make that happen, but regardless, I think it was very beneficial because there's many things going on in town. Obviously, stormwater is very, very important, but I still think there's other things. So we'd like to join you in that effort. I think I can speak for our board. So, good idea.
I had a conversation, I'm aware of what you're saying, John. I think that, I want to say it was about a year and a half ago, that, and you spoke about how we need to address stuff urgently and get stuff out of the way and address it, but that we can chew gum and walk at the same time. I believe that it was about a year and a half ago at one of these meetings where we discussed that we were actually going to put those meetings on hold. Now, you may not have been part of the group at that point. Maybe you were, I don't recall. But we agreed collectively as a group, and I believe Mr. Rogers agrees in this, he can speak for himself, that we were going to put the other, I don't want to call it ancillary, but stormwater was clearly a priority. This is, we're talking about, I know there's long-term planning, but stormwater affects the residents now. We've got people whose homes are flooding. I can't think of any greater need than the safety of our residents. I would put that above economic development, the education of our students, everything else. If our residents aren't safe, we're not doing our job. So at the time, the consensus of the group was we're going to put the meetings on hold until we get the stormwater hammered out. Now, I would respectfully but strongly disagree that we have moved forward in an expedient fashion since the Madison project has been executed. I am very happy that the Madison project was executed. As council, as this group will recall, as well as the residents, that we had a significant event, I think it was event number 8 since 2008, in June of last year. At that time, I let a little bit of my frustration boil over, and I'll say, invited these groups to have these meetings publicly, because I did not feel that we were making the progress that we owed the residents of Elmhurst. The good news is, we had our first meeting, I want to say, and these numbers are rough, but around the first week of July. And by the first week of September, we had the Madison project under contract. And I think that goes to the effect that these meetings had. And at that time, school board said, we don't want to handle it that way. We want to let Jim and Dave work it out. That was 7.5 months ago. We are failing the residents of this town. The largest project in our stormwater arsenal that has been proposed by Burke Engineering is the Bryan Gravel Lot, which back in September, I believe, Ms. Bastido said, yes, we want to, in fact, I think it was Ms. Ebner, we want to get this done as fast as possible. We're hoping we can get an agreement done by December. We have not reacted quickly. I don't want to get into pointing fingers. I'm telling you, we're failing the residents right now. Our groups had a meeting Tuesday of this week.
Yes.
We are no farther along Tuesday than we were in September of last year. Last year, the very first meeting you guys had in October, you came to the meeting and you said, we want to do a land swap and we want you to build us a $3 million building. You said, we want you to build us a building. We took a look at it. Our ballpark estimate was that building was $3 million. We called you guys and said, $3 million, that's a lot for a building. And you guys came back to us and said, didn't realize it was that much. We're going to remove our ask for the building. I had conversations with Shannon Ebner, and I said, Shannon, I understand there's long-term needs. I do think ultimately in the future that our two groups working together and sharing resources at the Public Works Garage will save the city money. The citizens of Elmhurst, it will save us money. We don't have 24 months to hammer out a long-term plan. We need to put a hole in the ground. There's 122 homes that are benefited in a 100-year event. One of the women who lives in one of those homes is here tonight. That Bryan project helps 122 homes. The first meeting we had with you folks in October, you asked for a $3 million building. We said, that's a lot to ask. You came back and said, didn't know it was $3 million, we're going to take that off the table. This Tuesday, when your group committed to have the IGA that we provided so you could provide us comments, your group committed to have a revised IGA submitted to us. They showed up without an IGA. The points in the, they gave us a memo and admitted that they said they were going to have the IGA, but they didn't have it. And there's 3 things in that memo, and they really, and two, one is a change, 2 haven't. One is conceptually, and it's been in the papers. You have property at Bryan that we want to use. We want to compensate you for that property by use of property next to our Public Works garage. We agreed that there's going to be a value difference, whether it's ours or yours. We'll pay the difference if it's on our side, and it appears that the appraisals are different to the tune of roughly $600,000. We agreed to write that check. On Tuesday, we were informed that you want us to pave that lot. Fine. Small potatoes as far as I'm concerned. I'm disappointed it took 7 months for you to tell us we want to pave the lot, but that's about the only progress we have. The other thing on Tuesday is in your memo, there's a clause, and I asked Jim Grabowski to make sure that Dave Moyer shared this with you so you'd be prepared for the meeting. There's a clause in that memo that says, we're going to have future needs, and we want the city to write a check for those future needs, but we can't tell you what the check amounts for. That's our progress in 7 months. So I'm reluctant to start up additional meetings if we can't get a Bryan project done that we all committed to get done before Christmas. May is next week. I believe...
When did you get your appraisals?
The appraisals that you provided?
No,
that
yours. Your appraisals.
You're the one who agreed to do the appraisals.
There's only one set of appraisals?
Yeah.
I thought you had appraisals.
No.
Okay. So are you getting appraisals? Or
We
are,
want-
you
we-
or are you accepting the number in our appraisals?
Yeah, we had our appraiser look at the appraiser, and they're okay. Ultimately, we are going to get our own appraisal, but the expectation is that you would respond to the IGA that we gave you.
Okay.
So 7 months.
Why didn't, if you're going to get appraisals, and it's already April, why didn't you get them?
Are you trying to deflect the fact that it's taken 7 months? What is our appraisal? We've looked at your appraisal. We said, yeah, not bad. Now, City Council believes that we will ultimately pay $1,200. when we go to a contract and have the appraisal done.
All right.
You're okay with this progress? That's what you're telling me?
I don't think I said that, Steve. I asked where your appraisal was.
And I'm
You're-
trying to
you're
figure out,
saying
I'm
you're-
trying to
you're saying
figure
you're
out how
ready
the
to-
appraisal,
Let me ask this. Are you in final design? I mean, you make it sound like you're bid ready. You're ready to put a shovel in the ground. Are you done with final design? Do you have bid packages ready?
John, we have a memo from you as of Tuesday that says we're going to commit to you, by the way, in an IGA that you haven't provided to us yet, we have a memo that says we're going to commit to write you a blank check. How would you like us to move forward?
If we had a signed agreement right now on the table, are you ready to go to bid?
Absolutely.
Okay, so final design.
No, not final design. Are you saying that the delay's on our side? I'm telling you,
No, I'm saying is what you're communicating to everybody out there is that we are holding up your bidding this project.
we don't have an IGA. Conceptually, I find it hard to believe that anybody in this room can look at the progress that we made in 10 weeks, from July 1st to the beginning of September, and we executed a Madison agreement, and now we can sit here and say from September to basically the beginning of May, we've made a lot of progress.
All right, the document you sent over, from what I understood, didn't reflect the deal. It looked like Madison, and Madison is nothing like this. Madison, we gave you the property to use, and it was terminable. What I understand was the document was not a land swap document.
I think that couldn't be further from the truth. I'm not sure if you read it, but it was clear in the document that we reviewed in Public Works that that's what it said. And so, as you remember with the Madison agreement, we went through, we did preliminary engineering, we showed that to you, we had an IGA, and we're in final engineering. So it makes no sense for us to go out and do final engineering when we don't have an IGA agreement. This is the process,
What
hold
I-
on, please, if you don't mind.
All right, sir.
The process is preliminary engineering, IGA, agreement, final engineering, review, implementation.
So what you're saying is the agreement has to get in place before you're going to go to final engineering?
Yeah, because there's a cost to that. Why would we spend money on something that may not happen?
Well,
Think about it as your own money.
No, I guess
How
what
would
I'm,
you do it?
I guess what I'm saying is, we're doing an agreement. We're going to do it. And what you're saying is you're waiting on final design until we have a signed agreement.
Everything that has taken place in the last 7 months could have taken place in about 3 weeks, John.
Okay.
I'm asking you, you finally had a meeting. I know you had an executive session. There's 3 things I see, regardless of the IGA. By the way, City Manager Grabowski sent you guys a letter before the IGA was even written and provided to you, what our top bullet points are, okay? There's a land swap with a delta that we agreed to pay for. New to us this week is that we're going to pave, that you want us to pave so that the land you get is paved. The third thing is there's a blank check. So I'm asking you as a school board member, because I'm telling you right now, I think that we're failing the residents of Elmhurst by taking 7 months to get to this point.
All right.
I'm asking you,
Steve, I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor. The whole concept from October of 2014 was that we would be made whole for all costs. And it's been discussed, my understanding, to have a seamless transition. When we move the operation from the gravel lot to the new location, the new location is supposed to be ready just to the extent the gravel lot was improved, which is graded with gravel and so forth. And it's my understanding that that was something that was discussed and put in place. So before we can move from that property, that new property has to be, at the very least, improved to that level. Is that right?
yeah, I think everyone here understands that you have passive storage in a gravel lot and we're going to move it over here.
All right.
That's not that difficult to understand.
I got this term sheet today.
Should we get back to the agenda, or do we want to, because we're into the school.
Actually, you're right. And I apologize, thank you, Alderman Mulliner. We are. The way we do these meetings, we go back and forth. Let me put it this way. I respectfully disagree that the discussions as it relates to Brian Gravel have been successful up until this point. I'm frustrated at the amount of time it's taken, and I am disappointed that I've allowed that frustration to boil over this evening. Let's get back on track. There's the general update. That's my response to having those additional meetings. I think we've got a project that we can get done as quickly as possible before we jump into those general meetings. That having been said, I'm going to turn it over to the Park District. Oh, I'm sorry, do we have comments before? All right. And then before the other general update, I'm going to ask Mr. Grabowski to tell us on is the Madison project.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to highlight the different projects. In Public Works, we talk every 2 weeks where we are with the project, so I just wanted to give everybody here and that's going to watch this a little bit of a highlight. Our completed projects so far are Webster Avenue. That's up and running and online. 2 projects are underway. The Tree Streets projects, if you're over that way, you'll see a tremendous amount of progress. And the sanitary sewer storage over off of the Greenway Trail is making tremendous progress, along with the Jackson Street lift station and all the infrastructure around there. In terms of planning, we've got the York and 290 project, Madison School, Yorkfield, Geneva Avenue, Washington, and the infrastructure projects that would ultimately allow us to put more water into the creek. Those first 5 projects, York, Madison, Yorkfield, Geneva, and Washington, will all be completed by the end of 2016 and online. So add on the Tree Streets, and you're talking about 7 projects that we will have completed that will have material effect on for the residents in those areas as it relates to overland flooding, and then the 1,100 homes in Southwest Elmhurst that have sanitary sewer backups will have a material change in their situation as well. Pending, we've already talked about them. They are the Golden Meadows, Wild Meadows Trace, Jackson, Bryan, York, Crescent, and East End. That's why we continue to have these meetings. I just want to highlight for everybody, the city, Public Works, the aldermen, city staff are doing all we can to get these projects moved across the line. We need the help for the other entities to get these going, because there's a lot of people involved with these things. There's a lot of moving parts to it, but all of our groups have a lot to do, but we all need to make sure that this is a priority. We as the city have made it a priority on top of economic development, safety improvements, all the things that go into our job. We ask everybody else to be doing the same. Thank you.
It's a much better general update than I was giving.
Okay, thank you.
Any additional updates before we move on?
Thank you. I have one tonight. As Alderman Kennedy said, the Madison project is under design, and in fact, it's moving along well enough that we are going to schedule the open house meeting for that. We've done that for each project, so the residents in the area can come and see what the project is going to look like. That's going to be Wednesday, May 11th, from 4 to 6 p.m. at City Hall. At that time, we'll also be discussing the added detention on Washington Street. The city's in the process of purchasing 3 homes on that street at a low point, and they'll be demolished, and a detention facility will be built there as well to get 3 extra acre-feet that's needed in the area. So both projects will be discussed at the open house Wednesday, May 11th. We'll be putting that on the Stormwater website tomorrow, along with delivering social media and flyers to the residents in the area.
Great. Thanks, City Manager Grabowski and everyone else for their general update this evening. As I said, we rotate. First up is the Cities and Parks conversations. We have 2 things on here. We've got York Commons and we've got Golden Meadows. Let me get York Commons and Golden Meadows. York Commons. Okay. All right. That's where we were, and these are variations of where we are. I'll turn it over to Mr. Rogers. And Jim, if you look up here, these are the 3 we've got. If you want any one of these, you just let me know which one.
That one's fine.
This one here, okay.
Yeah, that works. Thank you. So again, as I mentioned before, looking to continue to move forward. The IGA has obviously been completed, and we're now in the process of the plan review. We received the latest plan from the city 5 business days ago last Thursday. We are reviewing those with our engineer from V3 right now. I think, I don't have the exact number, I want to say there were maybe 6 comments that that Burke responded back to, and all but one have been, agreed to and signed off on, so to speak, between both of us. The one remaining one concerns the location of the valve. There have been 2 locations discussed for that. Mr. Mayor, could I borrow the pointer, the red pointer? Thank you. And so just so the folks in the audience are aware, so the city's proposed to put it in manhole number 1, which is right here by the street. We had discussed coming back about looking at manhole number 6, which is back here. I think in a nutshell, what it boils down to is the city's, first and foremost concern, understandably, is access and function and ability to maintain and operate and so on and so forth. Park District certainly understands those concerns. Park Board, I should say, their primary concern with the park site in a total entity is with the aesthetics of it and what will the structures look like and such at York Road. We've just even right up till a couple hours before this meeting, having some discussions with our engineers from V3, and believe we have some really good ideas on ways to address both of those that would address the aesthetic issue and still have the functional location be what the city is looking for. And we're looking to get back to Burke. I'd say if not tomorrow, probably Monday with some of those ideas. So we think we're very, very close on that, and that's the last item before things are ready to move ahead. Obviously, and we were pleased to be a part of the open house as well. I think it was last week that took place. I should say there's two items. That's the one relating sort of to the review of plans, and then the other one is the final details of the construction schedule. The city manager and I have had a few conversations back and forth about that. My understanding from our last conversation is that city staff, Jim and Howard and Kent, are still talking with Burke about some of the specifics on that. But so I think we've got just kind of those 2 pieces to iron out, and things will be moving ahead.
Mr. Mayor, quick question. I just want to make sure that I'm clear on what you said. What I just want to make sure that I heard you say is that your engineering firm has come forward with an idea of how to make it aesthetically look good where the city wants to put the valve.
That is correct.
Okay.
That is correct.
'Cause that location is very critical to us. That the location that the city wants to put the valve, just so that the public who's sitting here understands this, the reason that the city wants the valve toward that front edge is basically for 2, potentially 3 different purposes. The first purpose is that it will visually be able to show whether the valve is open or closed so that the public can easily see that off of York Road. But the most important piece of that is to be able to access it for maintenance, because as I've said, and Alderman Wagner and I have been pretty hounding this on this, is that the $100,000 was just one piece of the cost. There's ongoing maintenance, and this allows us to do the maintenance much easier because it's right there on the road. We would not have as easy an access if it was back in the back corner back there. So I appreciate the fact that the Park Board has come up with a way to make it so that aesthetically it'll look good, and I think we can work that through.
We look forward to that as well.
Okay, so right here, Mr. Rogers, this is what we're talking about, right? This is where the city proposed.
That's correct.
And I know at one point, the Park District was proposing putting it over here. And to reiterate what Alderman Mulliner said, there's really, there's a handful of issues that we feel are important and why the location is here, and we're looking forward. I want to restate what Alderman Mulliner said with one other addition, and then you said that V3 and you folks will have maybe some different ideas of how to attack it.
That's
Fine.
correct. Yep.
So when we were asking Burke about adding the valve, regardless of whether or not the valve was needed, which was the bulk of the conversation, the number 2 thing that Dr. Burke said was, if you put in a valve, every time it rains, the people along here are going to call you, and they're going to say, is the valve open, is the valve not open, is it taking water, is it not taking water? So one of the primary reasons is that if you can envision, here's the valve, here's York Road, it's actually the screw, but it's a giant stick that's on the top of this valve. And when that valve is open, and that detention pond can take water, that stick is going to be as high as you can see it. There's going to be a visual cue. So not only the residents of Elmhurst, but the residents who live along there will know that the valve's open. And I think that's very important, that if we're 1 inch into a 3-inch rain and someone from Crescent's driving home to their house, that's going to be immediate reassurance that that valve's open. So that's one of the primary reasons is to show that that's open. The other couple of reasons are that this is the lowest point of where of this whole piece right here. That's another reason we want it there. And then maintenance, I know that the Park District they understand that right now, this proposed area doesn't allow maintenance. And it's really maintenance for two types of maintenance. One is preventative maintenance, which you can plan to show up whenever you can and maintain the valve. But the other issue is this valve obviously will have an electronic component and sensors on it. And the last thing we need is during a 2-inch rainstorm that might turn into a 4-inch rainstorm is to get a failure rate from this valve and try to make our way back here. We want to be able to access it as quickly as possible during an emergency if we should have one. So I think Mr. Rogers is aware those are all our concerns, and we look forward to V3 and other input as it relates to the location of the valve. Make sense?
If I could, just real quick comment, and we agree with everything you're saying, and we've gone out of our way to try and accommodate you with the manhole number 1, and we've got some great ideas. And I think it would behoove us all, when this ultimately gets installed, to really help the community understand how that valve is going to operate, because 99.99% of its life, it's always going to be open. This thing isn't designed to ever close unless you're testing it or that basin gets full of water. So, you know, sometimes there's misconceptions. If the stem is up, is it really closed or what is it? So we look forward to working with you guys on that communication aspect of it. But, you know, we're very positive on where we're going this, and I think you'll be happy when you see what we present back to you. So
Okay.
we are. We think it's a great compromise.
And when will that be ready?
I would say we'll probably have it back to Burke no later than Monday.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
just want to reiterate the fact that we were very comfortable not having it at all. And so 99.99% of the time is costing $100,000 more than it needs to. You know, I just did. But you brought out the 99%.
Okay. We want this to be a positive meeting today.
Me too.
We're all set. So thank you.
Okay. I think the people who are closest to the timeline on the York Commons project are Mr. Grabowski and Mr. Rogers. So I'm going to ask both of them collectively for an update on when we're going to put a shovel in the ground and when this is going to be complete. I don't know which one of you wants to go first, but York Commons. No, York Commons. What's the timing look like for construction?
As Mr. Rogers said, we are trying to work out the construction schedule. I think we've talked here before about the timing of the pool, and there was hopes that we could get this going and actually completed before the pool opens. It doesn't look like that's going to happen. As I understand it, the pool opens Memorial Day, correct? That's correct. And it closes mid-August. And so there's concern on the Park District side about the construction activity around the pool causing problems and distractions. So we're still pushing to get that started as soon as possible. Engineering continues to move forward. As Jim said, we're looking at a reverse sequencing, if possible, where we start building the pipe from Crescent to the project versus building the detention pond and building the pipe to the east, which is typically how a project like that is constructed. Looking at final plans and bidding and things like that, it looks to be like that would be the start would certainly be after Memorial Day, and so we're trying to work to get that done as soon as possible. Our hope, our concern is that it doesn't extend beyond the fall as far as completion date, but we'll have more information on that as we work on this reverse sequencing to see what, if anything, we can possibly get done.
Mr. Rogers, you want to add to that?
Yeah, I would just like to add to that, and just so that everyone, particularly the public, is aware too. The Park District is happy and has been working with the city to try to work the schedule. And there are certainly a number of things that can go on in terms of the construction. Our main and primary concern is what's labeled on the construction schedule as basin excavation, and that's when that area within that yellow there would be earthwork machines, scraping, large plumes of dust and dirt and debris floating or flying around, blowing around in the park. Our concern is what that would do to the water quality of the pool, what might happen with bathers in the pool. But certainly are working with the city and staff, and we've had some good discussions with the staff about ways, as City Manager Grabowski said, to look at the portion of the project up at the kind of the north and northeast there, under the train tracks along the north edge, and certainly looking at ways to, again, as he said, just resequence a few things and still come out with the same start and end date as is proposed, which is kind of that start in June and end by the end of the year.
What are those options, by the way, Mr. Rogers?
Sorry?
What are those options?
Howard Killian had suggested, for example, which I thought was a great idea, that the city could come in, or its contractors could come in and work on the, sorry, I won't be pointing behind you, but work here where the site comes under the railroad tracks. And we even talked about the concern of trucking in and hauling out dirt. For example, our administrative offices by the tree streets, and we know that, it's a messy project, understandably. So his great idea that Howard had was when that pit is dug and when the excavation happens under the tracks, and say that's that July 15th. And the window of time we're talking about is July 15th to August 15th. The excavation on this schedule calls for starting July 15th. The pool closes on August 14th. So it's that period of time. So the idea that Howard threw out, for example, was all that digging and excavation could be done there, and the spoils actually could just be stockpiled in the park right along the railroad tracks. Don't even have to be trucked out until after the pool closes. Sit there while the contractor continues to work under the tracks, put the pipe in, do the things north. And so we thought it was a great idea. And again, so it's all the same tasks, just really reordering the one, which is the excavation.
Okay, you threw out some dates. I want to make sure I understand. According to the schedule, whatever schedule we had in general, it called for excavation, digging the hole starting July 15th, right?
Right.
And I get the concern. If you've driven by your First Street office, it's covered in dust, has been for quite some time. Now, hopefully digging a park won't create nearly as much dust as digging up roads, but I get it. So the yellow part, digging the hole, according to, in a world without a pool next to it, we would start on July 15th. And right now you're saying, okay, well, we want to figure out how to adjust the schedule to maybe push the digging out a month. There's a 4-week challenge we're looking at.
That's correct.
And then the idea is, and you're working with Howard, is to maybe work on this stuff, maybe, up to here, whatever it is. And maybe we can even do stuff, magic over here, who knows? That maybe doesn't delay, but reorders the timeline.
Precisely.
Okay. You okay, Mr. Wagner, any questions on that? That's great. I thought you were bidding. Okay, so York Commons. Park District's got some ideas about the valve, looking forward to those, and then the timeline will continue to work together to move as quickly as possible. Yep, and get it online as quickly as possible.
Yeah, Steve, I just want to say, I think the staffs have worked really well on being creative on this project to accommodate us for that month, and I think those are great ideas, and I really believe that it's not going to impact the schedule based off of what we've seen.
Okay.
Just a real quick comment. I just want to say thank you to the Park District for helping us get this one moving, because this is an important one. We may not be on the same page exactly with other things, but that's okay. We got this moving, so thank you.
I would ask, as the Park District gets creative on where they put this valve or any suggestions they have, we had our engineers do a quick calculation. The difference, the amount of storage just in this pipe alone from here to here, is 64,000 gallons. So every drop we can pull and the more we can take helps, okay? Golden Meadows, assuming everyone's okay, we're done with York Commons?
Yes.
Okay. So, Mr. Rogers, you look at these. I got this, I got this. I think that's it.
Back one. There we go.
Okay, so we're here. This is Golden Meadows. It's boomerang shaped, and we're concentrating on the east slope. Whoops. We're concentrating on York Commons as well. There we go. Okay, this is what the bulk of the talk has been. Do you want to provide an update on that? Sure.
The city manager and I met, contacted him, we met on, April 13th to discuss, we had received a copy of the proposed IGA from the city that was developed. It was our first chance to take a look at it. It was presented, I presented it to the park board, I believe that same day, that April 13th, kind of went through the highlights of it. And as we were reviewing it internally, we came upon something that then I shared with the city manager after that, where there seems to be, and this is not meant as a criticism, it's an observation as we went through the IGA, that there seems to be some layers of complication and I'll just say inefficiency that we think can be worked out of it. In terms of some of the timing of the major touchstone points that would take place in this IGA. And so in a sense, there's approving the IGA, and you all know the concepts, there's approving the IGA, there's appraisals, there's environmental testing, there's property being deeded over, there's funds placed in escrow, there's going to DNR, there's all those things, and I said those in no particular order. There's all those things, and so what I did was what we did as a staff, as a district, is laid out kind of the sequence of those events and the timeframes involved. And and looked at, there are a number of points in the agreement where it talks about, as proposed, it talks about if this happens and the city decides not to move forward, this will happen. Or if this happens and the city decides not to move forward, this will happen. And again, these are observations, not criticism. So for example, one of them that was in there was that if the environmental is done and the site comes back dirty and the city doesn't want to do that, the way that the timing worked in the proposed is that at that point in time, the property would have already been conveyed to the city. And so one of the notions was the property would be conveyed back to the park district if the came back dirty and the city didn't want to do it. And the funds would have been placed in escrow and they would be returned back from escrow back to the city. And so what we did was we looked at the sequencing of events as a way to see if there was a cleaner sequence, a more efficient sequence to events. And we put something together. I shared with the city manager. I'm not sure if it was shared with everyone. Okay, it's been shared. Shared that with the park board as well. And when Jim and I were meeting actually that first time, again, the good thing about sitting down together and talking through these things, one of the things that immediately was kind of light bulb that I think went off for both of us, I think it might have been Jim's suggestion as we were looking at the order of things, we said, well, we ought to do the environmental right now. There doesn't have to be an IGA. There are plenty of times where city will come on park district property to maybe do a survey for something or other, or vice versa. And so as we talked about that, we said, yes, let's do that. Let's make that happen right now. Let's get the environmental going. So I worked with the park district's attorney to put together, I think it's a 4-page real brief, for lawyers, a real brief agreement, and it's called an access agreement that just kind of spells out what the city will do to go in and do that environmental testing. I know Howard and Angela have been in communication a little bit on that. Your attorney had one suggested change to that access agreement, which got ironed out today, and so that's done and ready to go. So from that perspective, looking at the IGA, I think the hope would be that I was talking with our attorney this afternoon that at some point there could be a whereas in the IGA that says something to the effect of whereas environmental testing has been completed and the site is clean, now therefore, and we move forward. So that's an example of that. So as we looked at the sequencing of events. We tried to look at what follows and what then follows doing the environmental assessment, getting the IGA approved, and then moving into the next phases that eliminate some of those. Well, if this happens, then something else has to happen because we kind of eliminate or we check those off the list as we go along. One of those, obviously, that's been discussed is when IDNR is approached, and what we're suggesting is that, and what the board feels strongly about is that. We want to have, and I think we've actually talked about this as a joint, body here working together. Is the notion of having our ducks in a row when we go to IDNR, because what we don't want to do is we don't want to go to IDNR and say we have this idea, and here's kind of the basic framework, kind of outline of it, and then 2 or 3 months later we go back and say, well, you know what, forget it, it's not going to happen. The environmental didn't come back well, the appraisal came in too high, so we're not going to do it. We don't want to take your time, DNR's time, our time. We don't want to pay more to lawyers for drafting agreements, deeding over properties, putting together agreements. But I should have said in the beginning, we believe that all of these steps can be accomplished, I guess I'd like to say more quickly, but if not quickly, in the same amount of time as they've been reordered. So what we proposed, and I've said to Jim that if we agree to this conceptually, we will take the IGA draft that you provided to us and we would rework that language to get it back to you to look at it this way. But the notion being that the environmental assessment be completed, which is basically ongoing right now, as we speak. We get the IGA document done, get that approved, jump into the appraisals, and again, I think the appraisals are another one to discuss, with council meetings and board meetings and committee meetings, how long it takes the IGA document to get approved. Is that something that we all feel needs to wait until the document's signed? I think that can be something that could potentially be discussed as well. But in any case, complete the environmental, approve the IGA, get the appraisals done, place the funds in escrow, go to DNR and say to DNR, we have a package that is done and ready to go. We have a clean site, we know what the dollars are, an IGA's been signed, funds are in escrow, DNR, we would like to do this, and will you give us your approval to go ahead and do that? And then after that, and then if DNR says yes, then we deed the property over to the city, and you put your shovels in the ground, so to speak. So that's the concept that the park board has been discussing, and that I presented to the city manager.
Alderman Mulliner, you want to say something?
Yeah, once again, I have to say that I appreciate what you're moving forward with, because I think that some of these things, as you said, can be done prior to the IGA being completed. I still would like to see us get the IGA completed as quickly as possible.
Goes without saying, for us as well.
Yeah, and ideally, I would have no problem. I mean, I don't know how the council would feel about it, but I would have no problem with the appraisals being completed prior to the IGA as well. The only thing that I would like to see flip-flopped on your list is the escrow and the IDNR. And it's not an issue of whether or not it's going to happen or not. It's just to be able to say, we don't put the money in the funds until we're sure IDNR has said okay. I mean,
and I can tell you that's perfectly fine with the park.
and
I
to
think
me,
Jim and I even kind of chatted about that too.
yeah, to me, the order, I don't see an issue with it. I don't know if any of the other elected officials do, but I think it's fine.
I think it's fine as well.
Okay, sorry. Here's a kind of a flow chart, and you can't see this on TV, but this is what Mr. Rogers provided, and it really is just a simple, it's a reordering of things that, in my opinion, I don't want to call it small potatoes. It is what it is. The end result is the same. There's a little bit of an expectation that the city will outlay some money sooner, which we're going to outlay at some point anyway, whether it's with an appraisal or funds placed in escrow or environmental. So I really am okay with it. I would say that we're going to want to expedite this, and I'll ask you to expedite the IGA. You're putting this into an IGA. The one thing that I will respond to Alderman Mulliner about the funds in escrow is, if I believe that the funds being in escrow shows even one little bit more of good faith to the IDNR, then we'll put the check in before we meet with them, just so they know that happens.
Maybe in a show of good faith, and I say this half tongue-in-cheek, but half not, maybe we can take the check down with us, and we can...
Well, we could put it in your
and then
account,
say,
Mr. Rogers.
We're ready to go.
Okay, so, and a little background, really the thing that kind of, I think, necessitated this whole thing was, and this happens when it comes to, especially at committee, which is where all the heavy lifting gets done. I think that the IGA for Golden Meadows was probably before Public Works 2 or 3 times, at least 2 times, before the idea came up about environmental testing. So we're just happy that environmental testing, as with any substantial change of a large piece of property, happens anyway. So the intent of the council was, let's just make sure it's in there as with any real estate contract. So we're fine with it. I would say let's move as quickly as possible. I do think that if you look at this sheet on the left, which was originally proposed, there was like a 10-day time frame that was written in the IGA. Let's just move as fast as possible to get this in front of the IDNR and be as buttoned up as possible. So I think we're okay with that.
Just a real quick comment, and I think everybody's in agreement here. I'd almost say what we're proposing, the first 3 items, the environmental assessment, the IGA approval, and the appraisal, are really all in parallel, going along at the same time. And whatever pops out the fastest, great. We're not going to stall getting to working on the IGA approval and working on the appraisal. We should be starting all those, right? I think everybody is thinking that, so maybe that just, reconfirms it. So it's really going to work faster. So, thank you.
Okay, I don't think conceptually there's any issue on the end result. or even the steps that are in it. Maybe a little reorder, but everything else has been agreed upon at this point. Okay, and I think we covered the intergovernmental agreement status, yes?
Yep. believe so.
Any other comments before I come back to you for the wrap-up, Jim?
No?
No. Okay. On to District 205. Let me take an opportunity to reset the conversation from what started and say this. A couple things. Mr. McDonough, I think you sense maybe a little frustration. But here's what I'll say. I'm glad that you're here tonight. I'm glad that we're continuing to work together. I know that the board itself, your board, actually met and discussed Bryan, so I'm interested in hearing the update from you as it relates to the Bryan project. As far as more meetings, sign me up. Can't wait to have more meetings with you guys or these guys. If it's better for the residents, which I think it is, I'm on board 100%. Back to the Bryan gravel lot situation, I'll state 3 things that I think are conceptually understood between the two groups, and I'd ask you to fill in the blanks if you can. In general, as it relates to the Bryan gravel lot, we already mentioned that it helps 122 homes. It's about 23 acre-feet. The idea in general is right now, the school district, it's actually, I don't think it's connected to Bryan operations, but it's school district operations. They use it for storage. The idea is to move that storage from Bryan over next to our public works garage, so conceptually we understand that. If there's a difference in the value of land that's being used, we identify that difference and we make up the difference with, in this case, cash, unless it's something else, but let's just assume it's a check. So we agree with that. We agree on swapping. I understand that in the conversation that was had with Mr. Faulkner and Dave Moyer, that the idea is that the request is that the lot that gets used and turned over for use at the park or for the school district is paved. That's in addition to the dollar amount. That's something to be discussed by council, but I think that's something that at least we know it's on the table and we can discuss it. But the last and biggest issue that I would ask tonight, John, if you can address it, is I know that your attorney and Dave Moyer gave us, was it Tuesday of this week we got this?
Yes.
I know there's been a couple of meetings. The last meeting was Tuesday between city manager and your leadership. And one of the points, which I assume reflects something of the conversations that you've had with the school board in executive session, but one of the points on the memo that was provided to us says that, in general, you folks have long-term needs for facility use. We understand that, but the next point says, define that the city is going to make contributions to meet the district's long-term needs. I read that, the city manager read it, and I believe it was communicated somewhat in the meeting, is that that means more of an outlay from the city. And what I'd like to know is, what does the school board need so that we can move forward with the Bryan deal? Okay?
Again, I like this tone so much better. Okay. I think we can work together. Okay. All right. I'm sorry. Not very good at this. Okay. There's really 3, if we go back to what was originally stated, it was make the district whole. Okay? And I understand that when someone wants to sell and when someone wants to buy, you generally use market value. Okay? But it's my understanding that this is a little different. Okay? We are moving at your behest. We're going to move it out of there. Okay, paving is new to me. I thought it was going to be gravel like the old one. Is that?
I was told paving, and that was...
I got to tell you, we've been relying on the professionals just so we don't have this to happen. And apparently there hasn't been any of this between them. So it's my understanding that to make the district whole, there's 3 elements going on there. One is short term. You want to get on before August 1, and get digging, okay, that means on August 1 or August 11th or whenever it is that transition point would be. We need to have a place that operates functionally exactly the same as what we're leaving right now. It's going to be farther away. Everybody acknowledges that. It might have a rougher road to get there. I don't know, but on that day one, that short term has to replicate what's there now. Then there's what we described as middle term, okay? Right now, we have a piece of property that is on a street. It has all utilities, it has all access, et cetera, okay? Middle term, and coordinated with our whole capital plan, is the idea that an indoor facility assembled is going to be good. So what we're asking there is simply put us in the same spot as that. I'm going back to the memo of March 18th, and then the first draft of the agreement I show, is April 6th, okay, not last fall, okay? What I saw last fall, I didn't, frankly, I don't know. It wasn't a land swap agreement. April 6th was the first land swap agreement, okay? That had this idea that, you know what, maybe you don't want to give us this place right next to the garage because you've got expansion plans, it destroys the utility. I understand maybe there's another piece of property out there, and that this middle term idea that the district could do a garage and consolidate some features there might move. That's fine, okay? All we want is day one, the function that we have when we move is moved exactly, and then we have this potential when this middle term comes around, and that means utilities and that means access, so that we could do this interim thing. The third thing's a lot harder, okay? If you look at, do you have the site plan, or the whole site plan of Bryan?
Oh, Brian, yeah. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, and I'm going to try to explain this because, just because I look at it. That right there, including the gravel lot and the whole thing, is I'm going to do to you what you do to me. I'm going to go over there.
Oh, got it.
There we go. Give you neck aches for a change. No, I'm just kidding. This here is 13 acres, okay? And when you go from a 13-acre assembled parcel to a, 11.2 acre parcel, you take a piece off this nice assembled parcel. So long term, there is less utility there. The market says, well, this is developable on its own. You wouldn't sell this if you didn't want to. And since a buyer will buy it, here's the fair market value for that. And we're like, wait a minute. Getting fair market value does not deal with the fact that we now have a less flexible parcel there. And so this long-term thing is a little conceptual, it's a little abstract, but the idea is when we go into our capital plan, we've given up something here. We've given up that. If it was free market, fair market value, and you came to us with that, that land swap over there, we'd say, no, we're not selling. Okay? So this is long-term make whole. So you got short-term make whole, make it work on day one. Middle-term, long-term make whole, bring the utilities and access just like is here. And then long-term, address in some fashion what this loss of utility is. One of the things is, look at it right now. Suppose, we get a capital plan that says add on to Bryan, okay? Well, the only place to add on, if it was in this configuration in that day, would be softball fields. And so at that point, we'd be looking and say, can you help us? We've lost our ability, because we don't have this anymore, to do that addition that we had before. Can you help us out? Can you help us relocate? Okay? What we were trying to do was we were trying to get that into the hands of the professionals to do a little brainstorming, do a little problem solving, and come up with what the make whole on that really conceptual element, loss of utility in the entire site of Bryan in a long-term capital development phase, what that make whole would look like. And so we were looking for the experts, rather than have us, go at it with hurt feelings and all that, tell us, well, what's a way to mediate this loss of value to the district? Because it really is. We're in a capital planning process right now, and we're taking a chunk out of one of our most valuable assets, one of our largest assembled properties. And so what we're going back to is the simple concept of make whole. Make whole short term, make whole middle term, make whole long term. That was long and wordy, and I apologize.
Nope.
But that is where the board is right now.
Okay.
And so I can't sit here and tell you that. What we did is when we met on the 12th, and we came up with this, and the board said, yes, we want to see the make whole on those 3 points, it was turn it over to the professionals. Let them come up with a good idea. See what they can come up with. And, and frankly, you got a lot of tools in your toolbox.
Mr. Wagner, go ahead.
John, I don't know the answer to this question, but is your only option long-term to expand into the softball fields?
I don't know, because we're doing a strategic planning process that will deal with capacities and building
Understood.
floor area
but I-
envelopes and things like that.
It'd be nice to
and-
know-
And how we're going to fit that, and we're going to look at existing things. But there may be something we would ask the city to help us do to restore lost utility in this location. And I don't know
Put
what
that
it is,
aside
to
for
be
a minute.
honest
I'm
with
just curious about the expansion, the long-term goals, which seem to be driving your need to do this negotiation, right? So I'm wondering, is there a height requirement for the school itself?
If lack of area drove a construction delta by going up 2 stories instead of 1, that would be a cost of having a reduced site long-term.
In English, what would be the answer to my question?
Is there an appraiser in the house?
All I'm saying is that if expanding to the softball fields is your only option because of all the rules and regulations, then that's your only option. And if you're saying you don't know if that's your only option, I think we should find out what all the options may be.
Well, that's
True.
why we go through the capital planning process. There's this unknown. What we want to do is we want to work with your construction schedule, okay? Give us that construction start date. Tell us what you need, okay, to
Love to.
make that construction.
Love to, but I
okay.
just want to have an honest
Well, and then
conversation.
well,
Because you're throwing out long-term plans that may affect these construction situations
I
and
know.
our agreement to move
It's-
forward.
it is-
But you're using one scenario, that there may be other scenarios that you could consider. Again, I started it out by saying I don't understand or know the answer to my question. It's just a question. But it's something to think about, yes?
we don't know what those options are.
We don't know what we don't know.
We don't. Yes,
All right?
thank you.
So quick, and then just 2 comments, and then I'll go back. I know the aldermen have some questions. One comment is, I know that, because I went through this when I was trying to get some stuff done at Jefferson, I believe, is Bryan itself maxed out as a footprint, real close to maxed out as it relates to meeting the stormwater issues from DuPage County? There's a DuPage County Stormwater Act of 91 or 92 puts a limit on construction. And I know that, I'll give you an example. We wanted to add a basketball court, which added impervious surface to Jefferson. And we were told Jefferson has an entire allocation left of 1.5 square feet. And I believe Bryan is very similar maxed out. They might have actually 75 whole square feet to work with. So I'm just gonna, and this is kind of I'm gonna assume that if you built at on the ball fields, what's the building right now would end up being the ball fields. Because I don't think you have the ability actually to expand your footprint. But I get the construction issue, right?
Yeah.
That's point number 1. Point number 2 is, I hear what you're saying about long-term facility planning and long-term capital planning. Our long-term plan that we're asking you to share in is a permanent solution for 23 acre-feet and 122 homes. So we know going in that it's not ideal. We know that we are taking something that is contiguous, and we're moving roughly 1.5 acres over somewhere else. I get that. How do we get to a number or an ask or a clause in a contract that gets us to start digging? Because we were faced with a similar, I don't think you were here, you might not have been, we were faced with a similar situation with the Park District where they said, you'll make us whole. And that means a blank check. And Mr. Rogers even said, you know what, you're right, and we're not asking for a blank check, so we're gonna put our thinking caps on and figure it out. So I'm asking you, because I think a lot of this, I'm gonna draw a line in the sand and say, you understand, I think you understand my disappointment in the progress of this project. So starting today, how do we get that magic clause in the contract? How do we define it? Because it's gonna be tough for me and these elected officials for the city to say, we've agreed to write the school district a check for how much? I don't know. So we gotta get past I don't know in terms of make whole. We've gotta define it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I would like to think that there's a bunch of smart people here in the Chicagoland area that we could probably get to a definition, I'm guessing in less than 2 weeks.
Okay.
So the ask has to come. Ultimately, it's going to come from you folks.
I know.
How quickly can we get there?
From what I understand, Mr. Acker and Mr. Faulkner have worked together well, and Jim and Dr. Moyer have worked well together. I think it's a brainstorming with the right professional in the room. You know, maybe it's a call to the appraiser. How do you do something like this? How do you, I know your desire to put a number on it today, but maybe there's a procedural way to deal with it in a cooperative way in the future. I don't know. I want to leave this to the professionals to come up with the best solution. But there is something there. We're asking to be made whole. We don't want to put one harm behind our back when it comes time to do capital planning on this site. It's just that simple. I wish I could say I knew what the answer was, but again, I would defer to the people that are smarter than me, that have lots of letters after their names, lots of degrees, and you know, solve problems like this. You know, my first thought is there are probably appraisers out there who look at a way of monetizing concepts and putting a number on them. And maybe that's the way to go, but I also think that's limiting. You've got so many tools in your toolbox that I'm just wondering if there is a way where there's an agreement to do something at some time later on that solves the problem. You know, we could come back and in the capital planning process, come back and say, there is no loss of long-term utility there because of X, whatever. The plan is something fits very perfectly in there. I don't know what that is, and I'm really, we're just concerned that we don't look back and say, oh, why did we do that? Why didn't we solve this problem? Because if we did, then we could do that there.
The last thing I'll add, and then Alderman Mullen will go to you. Anything else you ask for, regardless of what you ask for, is coming out of their pockets. So in your long-term planning and in your capital planning, it would be great, and I assume you will, knowing that you're giving this up, that your planning is going to try to be as efficient as possible. So I would just ask you to express to not only the board, but Dr. Moyer, the frustration that we have. Let's figure out how we get to this magic clause. I don't know what it is. I will have a tough time conceptually defending to the residents of Elmhurst that it could be a $10 million bill, because right now it could be. So let's figure out how to put that in a contract.
And by the same token, I have a hard time telling the parents and the taxpayers of District 205 that we're landlocked, we're land hungry. We don't buy property very often, if at all. I mean, I don't know in the last purchase, but we took something away. We took a very useful site. We understand the need to work together.
That's all you have to tell them, and then send them my way.
Okay.
All right.
When you
Alderman-
say ask for something else, it's my understanding that conceptually, there's no disagreement with this.
Yeah.
And it's a matter-
E2 is a
yeah,
blank check.
Right, well,
It is, until it's defined further.
right, it's an unsolved problem. It's not, we're not asking for a blank check. We're asking to look for a problem.
Alderman Mulliner.
Okay, let me take a stab at a couple of things, and I'm going to kind of back up a little, but I'm going to attack your one question and the smarter people in the room. Sometimes the smartest people in the rooms aren't the ones with the initials behind their names. Sometimes they're just people who look at it and say, there's some common sense here. They solved the problem with the oil rig in the Gulf Coast by a plumber. So, you know, he didn't have a lot of names behind him. So let's talk about this problem that we have in front of us. And one of the things that I hear your concern is the concern of we're landlocked in this particular location, and what if we need to add on? What if? And we do know that we've got the flood mitigation issues that we need to deal with, the stormwater rules that DuPage County has, et cetera. The goal here, in my mind, is number one, to get this facility set up so that we can handle the water, okay? So that we can take this piece of property, which, by the way, just for everybody's information, for 40 years, from the time District 205 was formed in 1972 until about 6 years ago, was a piece of property that was just a gravel lot. There was nothing sitting on it. It was a blank gravel lot. It was extra parking for people. When McHugh came in and did a lot of construction, they moved their facilities over there as a temporary holding pattern, and that facility then was, the maintenance garage looked at it and said, this is a great spot for us to store stuff, and they started storing stuff there. I'm being kind by saying storing stuff there. Ultimately, in my mind, when it comes to the two issues that I see in front of us, and this kind of goes back to the heart of one of the things you were talking about, John, and that is how do we work cooperatively on a number of different things. And one of the things that I see is we want to get stormwater stored here. You want to have a place to have your maintenance garage. Long term, and I don't contend that it should be that long, but long term, you should be sharing our facility with us. That's what the ultimate goal should be. You should be sharing the facility that we have, because that makes it best for the taxpayers. So if we say that the long-term goal is to store that facility and store your vehicles and have a facility over in our location for that, then when I look at the Bryan lot, and I'm not a rocket scientist, sorry, I wish I was, but I go and take a look at the northeast corner of that lot, and there sits the old maintenance garage that the school district used for 40, 50, 60 some years, that piece of property right there. And to me, if we get a cooperation between us and you, and we get your facility into our facility, or we move it to another location temporarily and then we get it in there, that building can go away. If that building goes away, now we've got that land as well as an additional, let's say, I don't know what it is, 7,500 square feet that you can put on. That's additional classrooms. If you look at the other side of that, on the northwest corner, you'll see the little white part. The roof is white there. That's the newest addition to Bryan. And you could probably put the same thing on the other side and add an additional 4 to 6 classrooms. I believe that's 6 classrooms in that location. That would add an additional 6 classrooms. So what I'm suggesting is that if we look at this thing as a holistic thing, if we're looking for an additional ask, you know what my ask is? If I'm the school board, my ask is, once I've got my facility moved over there, would you tear down that building for me? Thank you, now I'm done. If I need to add on, it's my responsibility to add on to the schools.
I think you're making a strong argument that there is not a significant loss of utility in taking that parcel away.
Right. And that's my point.
I understand your point, and
Here's-
it does. And so in which case, if there is indeed small loss, we wouldn't expect a blank check. You know, we're looking at just looking at this issue. By the way, I think that goes away with the middle term solution.
It does.
Okay, so that when we get a building, then that is centralized with that over at the other location.
And I guess...
And there are other things that are happening that, you know,
Yeah, and I guess my point, John, is that I'm trying to give you things that you can bring back to the school board to take that item E out of the picture, to be able to come back to us and say, here's the cost factor that we're talking about, that delta that we don't know what it is. Let's come up with a way to come up with that delta. If the cost is to tear down that building, you know what, as a city council, I'll tell you right now, I'll support that in a heartbeat if that's what it's going to take for me to get the amount of homes out of the flood area. You have to understand that Alderman Wagner and I have been sitting here now since 2010, trying to figure out how to get this particular project done, because this is the most important project to the 7th Ward that there is. And we'll move mountains if we have to, the two of us, to get this done.
Months ago, we crossed that bridge already, and we said, can we get into the gravel lot? And tonight I answered it again, which is, you get that short-term covered, so that on day one, when we move over there, we've got, what do we got? A gravel lot and porta potties and, you know.
Okay.
Make that happen.
Yeah.
And we will try our best to meet your construction
Let me just
schedule.
I just want to say this, and I know Alderman Kennedy wants to say something as well, but what I would like to say is, I know the IGA is going to take some time, okay? And I'm sorry I say this about attorneys, but it takes a long time when attorneys start getting involved in things. I would like to see if we can kind of take, to some degree, the same type of approach that we're taking with Golden Meadows with your piece of property. If we can come up with some very basic agreements, even if we do these all in parallel, of course. But we get in there, we do soil samples, we do the environmentals that we need to, we get those side letters that are 4 pages long done, we start moving on these type of things, we get the appraisals done while we're working on the IGA all at the same time, so that instead of us saying, okay, now we finally have an IGA and now we'll finally start the project moving, I think we're all saying the same thing, but let's figure out how we make these things move forward. And I understand your job is to educate the kids, and I'm wholeheartedly there. I worked in education for my entire lifetime. I know how important it is to keep the kids educated. I will tell you this, that when the homes flood in those neighborhoods, the parents at that moment are more concerned with making sure that their kids are safe than whether they're at a school at that moment. And I fully understand what you're saying, but we've got to get this flooding under control so that they can get that good education. And I'm just looking for you to go back to your board and say, what can we do to expedite this? What can we do to make this so that in the middle of summer, we can go there as a group, the city, the schools, and everybody, and say, here's the solution we have, and we're going to put a shovel in the ground, and we can all stand here and cheer because we're starting to do the project we need to do.
All right. Again, Dave Moyer's not here. Our attorney's not here. But it seems to me, if there's agreement on everything but E2, then the Scrivener's job now is to dive into your April 6th first draft of the agreement and make the changes so that it reflects what's agreeable in here. And it sounds like you're saying everything but E2. Am I right? No? Okay.
I don't want to jump the process. Conceptually, it makes sense, but it still would have to go to Alderman Kennedy's committee to have the IGA reviewed, which is something that happens. But the other thing, too, is, and I mentioned this, is that we haven't discussed, it was new to me this week that you wanted the lot paved. That's new to me, okay? Brand new to me. That's my understanding. And it's my understanding the ballpark figure for that's $300,000. So we went from roughly $600,000 to a $900,000 bill plus.
Okay.
So conceptually, everybody here agrees. You move your stuff over to our lot. That's it. So, but that's where we are. Alderman Kennedy, you want to say?
Yeah, I just wanted, you made a point there, and I just wanted to comment about it, about Dr. Moyer not being here. And I think in the last 7 months, we've suffered from, I think, a little bit of a lack of focus, but also subject to the telephone game, right? There's conversations going on with Jim, with Dr. Moyer, and then it happens to you guys. We need Dr. Moyer, and we need 2 of you guys here every single time we meet. We're not asking for a lot. It's about every 6 weeks for about an hour. I know Dr. Moyer's new, but he's had, 9 months to get up to speed? I gotta believe that he has enough time every 6 weeks to get with the group, that you and Emily, to be here, to talk through this, and then bring that back in an expeditious manner, because we're not making the progress. We've said it till we're blue in the face. We're not making the progress we need to. We need to be quicker about this, and I think if we have the people here that are part of that, we're going to do a much better job with that.
I'm just going to add something. I would also ask that you have Frank Shue here, because the Park District has made sure that their support staff is here to be able to answer questions as well. And personally, I'd like to see us not wait 6 weeks to have the next meeting on this. I'd like to see us as a school district and a city get together much sooner than that to keep this moving forward. But I really believe that you need to have all of your players here. I agree with Alderman Kennedy that you need to have your superintendent here, and you need to have your director of buildings and grounds here, so we can get these questions answered and hammered out.
You know, I guess I disagree. I think more progress is made by the two administrations, the two chief administrators sitting with the attorney, and then following that, the exchange of documents. And that the real function of this is public information, so we're all on the same page as to what's happening. And I think that probably was the source of the unfortunate opening of this meeting, is we were dealing with different understandings of what was the result of it. But your draft April 6th, plug the parts in that are agreeable, flag the parts that are not. The attorneys exchange, they come back to us and they say, here are the open issues, school board, this is where you want to be, and then we come back and we deliver that message. That seems more efficient than coming here and hammering it out, because
John, it took you guys 3 months to do an appraisal that should have taken 10 days. It's not moving fast enough. And by the way, you guys owe us the appraisal, the IGA.
But it's done.
It took 3 months. You can't sit there and say we're moving as fast as possible and then say, you can't point the finger and say, wow, we didn't get from you what we needed until April 6th.
Respectfully, you took weeks to write a provision that did, then you'll get an appraisal, and then we'll get a third appraisal to decide. In that time, you could have gotten an appraisal and we could have gotten to a final number.
Okay, John, you guys committed to do an appraisal. Do we really want to go backwards on this? You committed to do appraisal back in September or October. It took you 3 months to do it. The last meeting we were supposed to have with your attorney, you didn't show up with the IGA that you said you were going to. So let's draw a line in the sand and move forward.
I
Okay?
understand, but usually when you do a real estate negotiation, you get an appraisal, you make your offer based on your appraisal, and that person can either accept your number or get an appraisal. This is a little bit unusual to say, I'm not going to get an appraisal now, I'm going to get it after we sign the contract. And if we don't have an agreement then we'll go through this agreed process with third appraisers. What's more conventional and involves less risk is that you should have gotten an appraisal. If you weren't going to take our number in March when it came out, you should have gotten an appraisal, and you'd probably have it by now.
Let me just jump in here real quick, and then I'll let you. Okay, John, this goes right to the heart of the reason why, in my mind, we need to have your superintendent sitting here, and we need to have your buildings and grounds director sitting here. Because what's happened is you're sitting in the middle trying to answer questions that they potentially could have had those answers already solved. They've been working together, solving those problems. If you look at what's been happening with the Park District and the school district, or the Park District and the city, the Park District's director is here, the person who handles their buildings and grounds, their whole operations is here, and they have board members here. We have these discussions. The city manager and the executive director have meetings behind the scenes, if you will. They're not really behind the scenes, but private meetings to make sure that things are moving forward. They come back to these meetings. They're here to address those concerns and to make sure that we're all on the same page and to have the answers present when we get here. I don't want to keep debating where we are, where we should be. I just want to know when I'm going to get a shovel in the ground and how quickly can I get your people. And John, you're great. I understand what you're doing, but we got to have all the bodies here in order to get these questions answered and to keep the process moving forward. We've got to hold people accountable to getting this project finished. The Indians are getting restless out there. They really are. They're saying, when is this going to happen? When are we going to do something on the south end of town? And this is the project that makes the south end happen, and the only way we make this happen is to get everybody we need at these meetings. So I agree with Alderman Kennedy 100%.
Well, again, I'd point out, it looks like they met on April 8th, they met on the 18th, and they met on the 26th.
But we need them here.
And
John.
that's 3 meetings.
I understand, but we
That's
need them
3
here.
I know, but in 3 meetings, they were able to work things out and identify which things needed to go to the board. I think that's far more efficient and effective. Again,
You know what?
yeah,
You go ahead and defend the timing to these people out here. I'm done talking about it. Right now, your attorney is supposed to get us an IGA on Monday. I hope it happens. I hope you convey that to Dr. Moyer, that we're expecting an IGA on Monday and a meeting on the following Friday.
okay. Is that something they agreed on, or are you just saying it now?
No, they agreed to
Okay,
that.
if they agreed on it, then they're responsible for that deadline.
You
Okay.
understand they missed the previous deadline.
Which deadline?
They were supposed to come this week to a meeting with the IGA, and they did not.
On the 26th, they came with an outline
Yes,
that had all the concepts.
John, you're missing the point.
So there was nothing new in this.
You had our version of the IGA.
Right.
When we presented the IGA to you, your attorney and your superintendent said, we will rework this IGA and provide you with a red line of the IGA, not a memo that they self-admitted that they wrote up the night before,
Okay.
okay? So they missed the deadline. I'm just asking you, the deadlines that they've agreed on now, Monday and Friday, ask them to stick to that,
Okay.
okay?
So when did they say the draft was due?
They said they're going to give it to us on Monday.
This coming Monday? No, what was the deadline with the drafted, at the last meeting, on the 26th?
I don't know, John.
Okay. No, I'm just trying to say, Steve.
Whatever the
They
last
missed
meeting date was,
the
they didn't bring the
26th.
IGA that they said they were going to bring,
Okay.
and put us on hold.
All right, so on the 26th, they were supposed to bring one, they didn't bring one on the 26th, they're going to bring it on May, what is that, May 2nd? Okay. So May 2nd, I'm going to write that down, I'm going to confirm that you expect the revised draft.
Everything is understood between the two parties, I believe. I'm not saying it's agreed upon, but it's understood. But in the memo that you have in front of you that was provided by your attorney, E2, the first sentence says, define city contributions to meet district's long-term needs. The agreement stalls without that input from your side. You agree with that? You're aware of that?
I know, it's hard to make half an agreement. You have to make the whole agreement.
So that,
But
we
there-
appreciate that you're going to get us an IGA, but
All right.
to state in that IGA what's stated in this bullet point doesn't get us any further. So I would ask that the IGA that's coming on Monday, is it possible for the smart people you talked about to take a crack at that point better than what's defined here, which just says define it?
Right. Right, it should have some progress on that issue.
Okay. Anything else? Mr. McDonough, you good? Ish. Okay. A recap of, any other business? Recap of information. Park District, York Commons, they're going to get back to us with some ideas about the valve. Is there any other, and then both staffs will continue to work together to somehow potentially parallel path and change up maybe the construction schedule with the hope and the intent to still try to meet the deadline, whether we put pipes in first or dig a hole or vice versa or what have you. IGA, you have our copy, you're going to put in,
We're gonna work
we're going to reword it,
this.
and when do you think that IGA will be,
I'm gonna say no later than, let me just look here. We're down in Springfield for a couple days next week, so I want to be realistic.
hey, bet you can get a meeting with Wayne while you're there.
Did you like how I put that right up on the T for you, that, like that? The week of the 9th, I don't, I need to talk to our attorney, and, you know,
That's fine. A week and a half from now-ish.
Week of the 9th.
Golden Meadows, you're working on the IGA. Got it. Anything else, Mr. Rogers, on the recap of what's needed? Did you need anything from us at this point? Do you need something?
No,
from
just, well, the environmental, I mean, obviously, that
Right,
that access
right.
agreement, so the access agreement, I'm sure you're looking at, you know, and final, well, terms have been agreed to, but, you know, that being done and moving ahead with that, and then, no, I'll continue, sorry.
You'll have the agreement tomorrow.
Okay, great. And we'll continue to work, I'll continue to work with the city manager, so no, I think we're good.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just going to go back on one thing. A meeting sometime in January, February, I don't know the exact date, there was a discussion about the remaining projects at Crescent, Wild Meadows Trace, and East End. At that point, it was said that those projects were off the table. I know Mayor Morley clarified that and said it was off the table. The last time we met, Mr. Rogers said, no, that's not the case. Those are potentially, can be projects again. So since you guys weren't here, Vince and Kevin, you weren't here at the last meeting, can we get some clarification as to what your stance is, whether they are open to be looked at as projects or not? Because
You bet.
that was
And
an
so,
open
right,
action item.
So at the last meeting at
Let me add one thing, Mr. Rogers, pardon the interruption.
Yep.
I want to thank Alderman Kennedy for bringing this up at 8:45. The one thing I clarified, I know that Mr. Rogers tried to clarify 2 or 3 times what they meant about getting creative, and I said, okay, I can tell you that creativity in our mind takes a backseat to cost, and that our proposed projects at the sites named were our number ones simply due to cost. And we are certainly open to other ideas, but we would ask that you provide direction on the primary ones that we provided to you first, and we'll continue to look at creative options.
Sure.
What? Is that okay?
Yeah, I just want to add one thing to that. Obviously, you've seen what we've proposed. There were things you didn't like about it. What I would ask is, help us understand what your constraints are in each one. What are the design constraints you're saying that don't allow projects to happen? And then give us that direction so that we can come back ultimately with some options, okay? Because right now, we're kind of shooting in the dark. You can't have creativity unless you put some boundaries around things, and we need those boundaries from you.
Okay.
I can go. Okay, as discussed at the March 24th subcommittee meeting, the last meeting, I did go back to the park board and talk to them at their April 13th meeting and received confirmation from them that their position on the 3 sites remains, that the park board is not interested in encumbering additional open space with detention basins to provide relief for the approximately 11 remaining homes that would be impacted without first discussing and considering alternative ideas for the 3 sites. And I will go back and remind that at that January 14th meeting, it was discussed, and what was discussed at that meeting was that the staffs would sit down and talk about some of those ideas, and that has not occurred. We remain willing to talk about those alternatives. So in terms of what the constraints are, I think what the board is saying that the plans as proposed right now with the small number of homes that they would help, they are not interested in encumbering the parks with basins for those, but are open to discussing other alternatives for those 3 sites.
I'm sorry, is that clear?
Crystal.
Got it. Anything else before we move on from parks? No? Okay. School district, I think we just wrapped up 5 minutes ago, John, about what the expectations are. Anything else you want to add before we schedule our meeting? John? Okay. I agree with my fellow elected officials up here that these meetings are productive and are even more productive when everyone shows up. So, and I don't know if let's put our heads together. I'm not sure if there's anything pending board direction on the parks side. Is there anything, I know that, for example, this last meeting we're sitting at right now was set up because we knew that there would be 2 full park board meetings in between these meetings. And I think, we got clear direction coming out of that. So I don't think there's anything pending, I know, in terms of board direction that would preclude us from meeting maybe sooner, because I do think as we get closer to this Golden Meadows, York Commons.
The one thing thank you, City Manager Grabowski. I think the one thing that still is out there is for the board to see the draft IGA for Golden Meadows that will be put together as well. If I may, I'll throw out a date. I don't know that this works school district-wise, but given where we're at, Commissioners Graff and Spaeth kind of leaned over to me and said, and just hear me out on this. We were proposing that the next time that the Park District would be at this meeting with the city would be June 9th, and here's the thinking. That it is our goal on June 9th that we are ready to go to DNR. So the IGA gets reworked, you take it through your channels, committee, council, such. We take it through our channels, a couple of board meetings to review, approve, so on and so forth. We figure out the appraisal process. One thing I didn't mention, but the city manager and I have talked about is there are DNR guidelines for the appraisal process, which we're looking to incorporate into the IGA. But the notion here being that that we make it our goal, and we talk about setting deadlines, checkpoints, whatever you want to call it, for ourselves, to say that we come back here basically saying that the IGA has been approved by our two bodies, and we're ready to go to DNR.
Okay.
Yeah, or if it still has to be approved, it's the terms have been agreed to. I'm going to be honest. We have a lot of Thursday conflicts towards the end of May. I'm being honest. That's a little part of it, but I was thinking that before,
Jim, I know we all expect you to be honest.
and I try to do that all the time.
I get it, and that's why I was clarifying what was pending between the boards if we needed update. Now, I do think that the public does get updates, and that's always beneficial. But I do believe, seeing the fact that we're getting an IGA from the school district on Monday and a follow-up meeting on Friday, I don't want to wait 6 weeks. If we're truly going to try to stick with our target for Bryan, I do not want to wait 6 weeks to have another meeting with the school board. Now, what I think we might end up doing is we're going to hopefully schedule an earlier meeting. If you guys can show, great.
Right, and if not, we'll miss you, horribly. You'll have to carry on for once.
The feeling is mutual. You have no idea. John, when are your next two meetings?
I think we have 2 meetings in May. That's right. I'm sorry to be so...
What's your schedule, though? I don't know. Is it on Wednesdays or?
No, it's Tuesday nights. It's always second and 4th.
10th and 24th.
That's correct. It is 10th and 24th.
Yeah, let's do the 26th, which is a Thursday. Ms. Gatesman, needs attention. Are you okay? It's okay if we take vacations. All right, the 26th I think would be ideal, John. That gives 2 full meetings and then a pretty immediate update. And if the park board can join us, great. If not, they will be missed.
Can I
I'd
chime in
like
for?
to see how much the attorneys and administrators can do and get down the road on this. And if there's one outside business/policy issue that needs to be discussed, maybe it's E2, maybe whatever it is.
Why don't we pencil in the 26th? Although, Mark, you have an issue?
Yeah, no, the only thing I wanted to do was just make sure we say the 26th, but being the end of the school year, I just want to make sure that there's no awards nights or anything. I didn't
think
get a chance to check
that's
this.
over by, it's 2 weeks
Everything's
gone by then.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
What it's worth, I'm sorry, that night happens to be all of the 8th grade graduations that night.
I thought there
All
was
3
something
middle
coming
schools.
up there. That's why I said we need to check the
And
calendar.
nobody here has an 8th grader, so we're in good shape. Wow.
But school board
I have to go
members may
there.
be missing.
All our school board members are assigned to promotion ceremonies.
All right, Wednesday the 25th then. How's that sound?
Day the 25th.
You guys don't have to worry about it.
We're missing you that night. Ms. Gatesman, is the 25th okay with you? Okay. John, how about we go with the 25th? I'm not even looking at my schedule, but I'm guaranteeing that there will be at least 3 elected officials from the city here.
I can only say that my calendar doesn't have anything on it.
Great.
Okay, good news.
All right. And actually, I think I have Dave Moyer's cell phone. I'll give him a call right after this meeting, formally invite him. Okay, I think that's it. The 25th is our meeting. If your meeting gets canceled, guys, feel free to join us. Anything else before I call for adjournment? We are adjourned, 10 to 9. Thank you, everybody.